Welcome to the Josh Hall Web Design Show. Helping you build better websites and create a web design business that gives you freedom and a lifestyle you love.
Hey everybody, welcome to the podcast. This is episode 102. And in this one, you're going to be hearing from a very special guest because this is somebody who is a legit digital nomad. This is somebody who literally has a decked out Sprinter van that has all of her gear and stuff so she can travel all around the world at times and work remotely. This is Suzanne Black, who has been a web design student of mine for a while and is a member of my web design club. And as I've seen her journey progress, I noticed that she was posting pictures all over the place, and it got us to talking, and I kind of asked her about what her work situation looked like, and she let me know that she is a digital nomad. She does have a farm that she works from, which is actually in this interview you'll see and hear her in her mainstay. But in a pre-COVID world, and even now in a COVID world, she's able to travel a lot. She was doing her work completely on the road, remotely. And it was really, really cool. For those of you who are interested in traveling and doing work so you can essentially have a life of freedom and basically work wherever and whenever you want, I think you're going to love this episode. And even for somebody like me who, has a home office and works from home, it was still really cool to find out how she balances all that. Because for me personally, I'm fascinated by that. I wanted to know, how the heck do you work from the road and work remotely and still balance your time doing all that? So we cover that and so much more in this episode. Suzanne is a true professional. She also has a real big heart for clients, and you're going to hear about the importance of customer care and importance in putting your customers first to create referrals, because interestingly enough, one of the big questions about remote working is how do you get clients if you're working remotely and traveling? And as you'll find out, Suzanne really took a very organic approach with social media, online groups, and referrals, one client at a time. So I think it's going to really empower you to do the same for those of you who want to travel. And if you want to see her decked out Sprinter van, I'm going to make sure the post of the picture of her van is in the show notes for this episode. So just go to joshhall.co/102 and you'll be able to check out her van. Now, before we dive into this episode, as I mentioned, and as we talk about in this episode, the importance of online community when you are a digital nomad and traveling is more important than ever, because you're not going to have the opportunity to have coworkers and a close set of colleagues that you regularly talk to. So having an online community is absolutely crucial if you're going to be traveling and have some sort of remote lifestyle. And if that's you, if you feel like you're going it alone, I want to encourage you to join Suzanne and myself in my web design club. It's a place where people like Suzanne and so many more amazing web entrepreneurs are rallying around each other, and we're building each other up, and we're creating a support system for each other. So if that sounds interesting, and if you like hearing from Suzanne and you'd actually like to talk with her directly and be able to talk with me on an ongoing basis, I would love to welcome you into the Web Design Club. You can go to joshhall.co/webdesignclub, all one word, for more information. And if you have any questions, just let me know. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have. And without further ado, here's Suzanne. Get ready to be inspired, pumped, and I think you're going to love this fascinating conversation, because I sure did. Let's roll. Suzanne, welcome to the podcast. It's so great to have you on.
Thanks, Josh. Lovely to be here.
You are also my first Scottish accent guest. You are going to be the first. I think we're going to have a couple more coming up, but you are the first. So super cool
Awesome.
To have you on.
Yeah, I'm lucky I don't have a really broad accent, so hopefully everyone can understand me.
Yeah, yours I can understand. A colleague of ours, Jill, who's also in the Web Design Club as you are, hers is a fierce Scottish accent. And I know she listens to the podcast, so hopefully she doesn't take offense to that by hearing me say that. But there is definitely a varying degree. I find the same thing with folks from the UK. There are some people I can understand really well, and then others I'm like, what the heck did you just say?
Yeah. And there's all the dialects and things like that, and slang words and so on. I mean, Jill, I think, is from Glasgow, so that's quite a broad accent as well. But yeah, all over the UK, there's just such a variation in accent, slang, and dialects, really. But I guess it's the same in the US as well.
I was just going to say, I'm sure it's the same, because I have a Midwestern accent, which isn't, to my knowledge at least, it isn't too Southern or twangy or anything like that. It's a fairly easy accent to understand. Now, I have family in New Jersey, and if you go out east, it's a whole different world out there. Same thing if you go south. It's very hard to understand folks in the deep south. So I love that, though. And that's what's so cool about this web design world is we're all over the world, and we're colleagues, and we're helping each other. So I'm super excited to have you on to share a little bit about your experience with being a world traveler and a remote worker and somebody who has struck really good work-life balance. So I figured we could just dive into that. And before we dive in here, Suzanne, can you just give everybody a snapshot of who you are and what you do with your business, Black Creative Media, which is a really cool site, by the way.
Thank you. So basically, potted history, I actually have been self-employed for about 16 years. My background actually is in photography. And so I've had a photography business doing weddings, portraits, commercial stuff. But I've always been very much into the technical side. I built my first website myself. I've always done a lot of my own tech and things like that. And while I love my photography and it will continue to run alongside my web business, I kind of found I was falling in about 4 or 5 years ago to people saying, "Oh, you do web design stuff. Can you do me a site, or can you help me out with that?" and so on. And it was around about the same time that I was making the decision that I wanted to scale back a little bit on the wedding side. 16 years of giving my weekends to someone else. Kind of felt that, and also with the wedding industry, you find that you are booking things in the diary like 12 months ahead. And for someone like me who likes to be kind of spur in the moment and I'm going to go off and do something, having that commitment that far ahead was quite, it's lovely for cash flow, but actually when it comes down to it, you want to be able to, off the cuff, just go and do something. So that's where I started kind of going, do you know what? And actually it came about as well that about that same time, I was starting to get people asking me about web design stuff. I was quite burnt out. I'd spent, 10 years really working so hard on creating this business. And I was about to turn 40. And I suddenly realized that there was nothing else in my life at that point. I'd just thrown everything into being self-employed. And, I was 3 stone heavier than I currently am, which in terms of American, that's like, 45 pounds. It was crazy.
No kidding.
And I was unhealthy and I was just so focused on the business. And I think that's where a lot of people go. It's like, you throw everything into your business when you're self-employed. And I thought, and then I had a couple of friends who had health scares, and I thought, do you know what, this is crazy. I have to change things because, the work-life balance was just totally wrong. And so one of the first things, and it's a slight aside, but I think it's important. I created myself this 40 at 40 challenge where every week I had to do something that I'd never done before that scared me or that I loved.
Oh, that's cool.
So I've abseiled off bridges. I took up rock climbing. I'd always been a skier, but for the previous, 5 or 6 years, I hadn't had a skiing holiday. So I just went and booked 5 months in the Alps and moved over there. And that's where this sort of whole working remotely started to come from, because I kind of went, you know what, I can with web design, if I go down this route, live my life in a much different way to this really focused self-employed business that I was working in before. So that's kind of where I came from. So I go and live in the Alps normally pre-COVID.
I figured a lot of our conversation would be pre-COVID and hopefully post-COVID.
Yeah, exactly. So, but the great joy of web design is, as long as you've got Wi-Fi and a laptop, you can work anywhere. And that's kind of where I got to. So I very much, changed my whole life about 5 years ago and just went, do you know what? I cannot let my business, whether it was a photography business or the web design business, run my life. So it's very much I live to, I work to live, not live to work, and follow that adage a lot.
Yeah, a couple of valuable points already, Suzanne. I mean, it sounds like you've been entrepreneurial, you ran your own business, but the work-life balance, that was obviously something that hit you. And I think that hits a lot of people. And whether it's a health scare or friends or family, or you're just, burnt out.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you caught that in a good season of your life where you were able to pivot. But it sounds like that was interesting that while you enjoyed that type of work with photography, it seems like the idea of web design, number one, there was a need there. People were asking about it, which there's a little tip for everybody. If somebody keeps on asking you about stuff, it might be time to look into that and start offering it if it's something you feel comfortable. But it sounds like web design just suited your lifestyle or what you wanted to do, which is really, really cool. Now, were you doing web design? Like, did you offer web design as a part of your photography stuff for brides? Okay. So did you do a clear cut, like, I'm done with photography, I'm going into web design, or was there a merge at all, or did you make it pretty clear?
I'm still doing photography, well, I haven't shot a wedding all year because obviously COVID, but I still, my space that I'm working from, that I'm talking to you from is, I live in our family farm in Scotland, so I've got all this wonderful space outside, but I've got a big log cabin with a shooting space and a great office that I can work from. So I do both. I still shoot. And actually from a web design point of view, it's great because I offer a one-stop service. I can do pack shots. I can do the whole thing. I can go in and do headshots for people. I can offer, an all-in service, which is great. But it wasn't that I kind of went, photography's gone, I'm now a web designer. I think there's a nice synergy between the two of them. They work really well together. But my clients from photography were never going to be my web design clients. So I actually target photographers as my web design clients because I know what they need from a website.
Gotcha. That's genius.
So,
that's a great way to go. That's kind of, I know we've talked before in the club about going niche and kind of appealing to certain type of people, that's great. Now, with the wedding stuff, because I'm sure your business was booming with wedding clients. I know, we're talking pre-COVID. How did you manage web design and balance that as well? Did you start charging a lot more for weddings and just limit your clientele, or how did you balance the two?
So, I don't know if the same is in the US, but, here there is much more of a wedding season. So it's like, April to October really is the season when I'd be out shooting weddings. And then naturally, I found from sort of December through to March, the wedding in Scotland, the weather in Scotland is not that great, unless you're into your skiing and stuff like that. So it really is a time that there's not really a massive wedding industry. And so What I started doing was actually 4 months of the year when I was taking some downtime from weddings is when I would do my web design stuff. And that seemed to fit really, really nicely. So it meant that I could just pick and choose and say, right, I'm going to do some website stuff. And then when I was busy with weddings, I would maybe do one or two, over that period.
Gotcha.
But, I could flip the switch back and forward quite easily.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. And I know I did the same thing similarly with logo design and branding because I merged the two. Eventually I did let that go. But there was a lot of good, and I like the word you use, synergy, because it often brought a lot of people in with print design that then wanted a website. So it's pretty cool how you worked out. I generally advise against running two essentially different businesses at the same time for too long, just because eventually it's probably going to come to the point where you got to decide, are you going to be a photographer or a web designer? But as long as you're feeling balanced, then by all means, keep it going. And if the synergy is there, that's awesome. So that's really great to hear, Suzanne. I guess I didn't realize that you were still doing the photography stuff. I know it's different with COVID, but as much as you're doing and how that, blends in and kind of leads them to web design, which is really cool. I want to talk about travel.
Yep.
Because that's one reason, like we talked about already, one reason you loved web design is because it gave you, unlike shooting a wedding somewhere, it gave you the ability to work. You just said it earlier, where and when you want. As long as you get the work done, as long as you have Wi-Fi, you're good. Have you always traveled that much, or did getting into web design allow you to start traveling as much as you and your family have?
Oh, I've always traveled. Like, when I left university, I went off on my own for 8 months and traveled through Australia and New Zealand and South Africa and Zimbabwe. I've been back to Africa a couple of times. I've been around Thailand. I've actually shot a wedding in Thailand, interestingly enough. I went to Taiwan a couple of years ago. Haven't done a massive amount in the US. I've been to Phoenix. that's about it. I was on a photography convention there. But yeah, my next plan was to travel through South America. So as soon as we're allowed, that'll be me off going Argentina, some of those sort of areas I'm really keen to see.
Well, while you're on this side of the world, come up to Columbus, Ohio, and then I'll take you out for a coffee or something.
Sounds good.
Now, did you, so you traveled a lot. With web design, though, did you feel like you had even more of an opportunity to do that since your income wasn't solely based on being there doing, photography?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting because where I was, like, as I say, I started sort of dabbling in the web design sort of world about 5 years ago and started doing, it was normally for other photographers going, oh, you did your website. Can you help me do your website? And I had a chat with Melissa. She said, look, you really should be pushing your way down this route because, you have that double skill of, a lot of people aren't as creative and technically, being able to do the two things. And I work a lot with, creating automations and using systems with their websites, using things like ActiveCampaign and linking up all the different bits with that. So, she said, you've got a skill there, you should be using it. And that's when I started kind of going, right, okay, I need to take this a little bit more seriously, and then found your courses. So that was great, and started working on that. And I'd kind of set myself this plan that it must have been about the summer of 2019, I'd kind of said, right, I want to have a 3-year plan whereby I move out of weddings, I'm doing some photography, but the bulk of my business is going to be coming from web design. That was my plan. And then we all know things changed quite quickly.
Then COVID hit. Yep.
Yeah, because I remember when I joined the club and you checked in with me and said, look, I just wanted to see how you were, how are you doing for the year? And I'm like, oh my God, I started the year not being a web designer. Like I'd kind of launched the business, but I was kind of not there. And, if you'd asked me in February what I was going to be doing, I would be like, well, I'll just be slowly building the business. But, as soon as COVID hit overnight, I lost 80% of my income for the year from my weddings. That was gone. That was not coming back. So I really had to pivot quite quickly and think, what can I do? Well, I have to go in all in with the web design stuff. And I've been really, really lucky, but yeah, I've worked my way through and I'm way above where I would have imagined in my 3-year plan.
Well, I remember you told me, you were like, oddly enough, COVID was like the best thing that ever happened to me.
Absolutely.
Because it forced you, number one, to really get going with web design, whereas you probably would have, what you did in a year in 2020, you probably would have taken 3 years or longer to get to because
100%.
You had to do it. But you were very proactive too. I mean, you said you were lucky. I would have to disagree with you, Suzanne, and I don't think luck had anything to do with it. I think you worked your butt off and you deserved every ounce of success that you have. I mean, you pivoted quickly, but you're a go-getter too. You didn't. I could tell, and even, when we were going through my courses, I could tell you were somebody who wasn't like, oh, woe was me, I just lost 80% of my income. You were like, all right, here's a chance. Here's the, luckily you had already started it. Here's my chance to dive in and do it. So that's really cool. Now, how did you, particularly, because I know your clients are all over, right? From web design. I mean, being that you work remotely, so did it really all stem from the photography, or were you reaching out to local businesses and online groups? Where did some of these other clients come from when you really launched your web design side of things?
So interestingly, I still don't have a portfolio on my website. And I think I mentioned this to you. 100% has been word of mouth. 100% of the work has been word of mouth. And it started with photographers, people I knew saying, oh, I need a new website. And they would Melissa's been great at, referring work to me as well. But each of those people have passed on someone else. And, that I think is the really, really important thing. I 100% believe that the most important business tool you can have is customer care. And if you treat people right, you probably don't need to advertise because your customers will advertise for you.
That's great. What a great lesson.
And I think and yes, I absolutely will need to, when I'm scaling things like that, start doing, email lists and various other forms of marketing. But I do believe that the most important thing you can do is treat your customers right. And I do think, it does worry me sometimes when I see in Facebook groups and things, the way that some people talk about their customers. And I think, that's a really, if that's your attitude when you're talking to your peers about your customers, how do they feel when you're actually talking to them? If you're not nurturing them, that's your best source of business,
Yes. Oh my gosh. I couldn't agree with you more. I think that's why you and I are on such the same level, Suzanne, particularly with customer care. I don't know if you saw this, but I did a podcast a while back on whether you should be Facebook friends with your clients. And I posted that in my Divi Web Designers Facebook group. And an overwhelming majority of people said never, I would never be friends with my clients. And it was just like you just said, the tone switched on how they viewed their clients. And I'm not saying that you need to be friends with every one of your clients, but I am friends with most of my web design clients, and they're still very near and dear to my heart. Like, the customer care was key. And it was interesting because a lot of the people I saw say that are the same people are saying, hey, I need clients. How do you get work? You just said it. If you focus and hone in on customer care above anything, that's the beauty, because you don't have to hustle. You don't have to kill yourself with marketing. You can go one client at a time, make an amazing experience, fine tune it as you go along. And then before you know it, you've got a couple dozen amazing lifetime clients. And if you do it right, that should be enough to support yourself in most countries. So I love that mindset. I totally back you up on that. I love that you have that. Now, did you learn that from the photography side of things, or did you have to learn that pretty quickly with web design, that there was a new, there's a new opportunity for more value and stuff like that?
I think lessons came from the photography business, because the way I looked at it, if I'd shot someone's wedding, I want there to be their photographer for life. I want to photograph their babies. I want to photograph their family. I had clients.
That's what I was going to ask. It's like, well, if you get married, hopefully that's only one job. Hopefully you don't have to keep on doing their next wedding. So did you you became a family photographer type of? Yeah.
It's like the photographer's version of a maintenance plan. Okay. It's like, you want to be that, you want to be that photographer that they just immediately think, we're having a family event, we get Suzanne, and that's what I was like, and I have clients that I photographed their kids from babies, and then suddenly, I'm getting a message going, we've just bought his first car, and I'm like, no way,
Wow,
But I've retained them all the way through, and I think I just took that mindset into the web design business because it's the way I've always worked. But I think it's the way I think as well, and it's interesting. We do differ slightly in the Facebook thing. I'm like, no client is sliding into my DMs, It's like, but I do make myself very available to them. I actually use Slack as my comms for clients, and they know they can get me anytime that I'm at my desk. But what I love about Slack is you can actually switch off your notifications at 7:00 in the evening to late in the morning and not have, because I just feel like it's back to that whole work-life balance thing of I don't want a client messaging me at 10:00 at night. Mm-hmm. That's slipping into my personal time. And I think as self-employed people, we have to be really careful to set boundaries, because I am totally available for my clients with caveats, because I am there, but I have to have a life as well. And that's that whole work-life balance thing. If you're answering Facebook messages at 1 a.m. because a client's, and I've heard people say, oh yeah, I've got this passive aggressive message from someone that they've messaged me at 2 a.m. and then at 7 a.m, they just have a question mark message because you haven't responded straight away. And I never want to get into that situation. So I've always been this is how you communicate with me, just because I want to manage expectations, I think, is the right way to do it. And if you manage them, it's great.
Yeah. And I've talked a lot about that too, with boundaries and setting constraints. And I probably should say, going back to the Facebook thing and being friends with clients, is I don't mean that you're available 24/7, but even if people do reach out to you, you don't have to reach out to them on that time. You let them know, like, hey, I'd love to answer this, but we need to do it in Slack or in Basecamp or wherever we're managing on, and I get back to you on this time or these hours, barring some website problem or something. Yeah. So that is huge. But it was interesting it was just the idea that like the tone of web designers changed with the thoughts of clients being more than just a payment. And I think that's very dangerous. When you care, whether it's web design or photography, like you mentioned, you became that photographer for that family. That is just a whole nother level of lifetime type of client. And it really does just take the stress out of hustling and getting new clients all of the time, which is really cool. So I was interested to see how you balance remotely working. And I want to talk about that next here, but that's great to hear that you had that approach, because really, I mean, we can talk about all the strategies in the world with getting clients, but if you don't care about them and offer more value to them, it almost doesn't matter, because what's the sense of getting one client and then doing a terrible job and then never getting referrals from them? You're going to have to keep on getting new clients over and over. So that's such a better way to go. I love to hear that Melissa Love was a great resource for you too. She's been on the podcast before. I actually want to have her on again to talk about photography, web design kind of stuff, because I know it's still really, it's a big booming type of industry there, photography and web design. But that's great. So you're running your web design business. Things explode pretty big in the COVID era for you. But I know you still traveled a little bit last year, and you guys have like this total kick-ass Sprinter van, right? I remember seeing, and I think I told you in the Web Design Club when you posted that, I used to customize those when I worked on I used to work at a tour bus customizing shop, and a lot of what we would get in was these Sprinters. And the majority of the guys working at the shop were all fat and overweight, so they couldn't like get into these Sprinters in some areas. So inevitably they were like, "Hey, little Josh, get over here, get into this cabinet." And I'd be stuck up in a cabinet helping getting light fixtures up there, or fabricating stuff. So I have a lot of experience with Sprinters. So I have I can understand the awesomeness with that. So yeah, how did really remote working, like, I guess more the question is, how do you do remote working and how do you balance that? Because like you just mentioned, work-life balance is a big part of your mindset. How do you balance all that working remotely?
I think it's just being structured and having a plan, and just because you're traveling doesn't mean you're on holiday. And I think that was the interesting thing is, with my time in France and so on, like, all my friends just thought I was on a 5-month ski trip. And I'm like, no. So basically because there was an hour's difference between France and the UK, I would be on first lift. I would ski for an hour and a half. I would be back at my desk by 9:30 UK time in the morning and work a normal day. So I was still doing stuff that I want to do, but, managing it within a timetable that I was still available to my clients in the normal time. So you can do all these things, or, I would say that, I wasn't available on a Wednesday afternoon and I would have a full day away or something like that. But I think it's just making sure you have a plan. So, again, with the van, I think that was I only bought it this summer because I was like, if I can't go to the continent, if I can't go over to Europe, I have to be able to travel in the UK itself. So I sold my car and I bought this van. And it's kitted out with a 4G router and Wi-Fi modem. So it's basically set up as a mini mobile office. So I can literally go and sit beside a loch in Scotland. And as long as I've got 4G connection and my laptop, it's got a leisure battery, I could work all day. So it's
I know you posted a picture in the club. Are you cool if I take that and put it in the show notes for this episode so everyone can see it? It's so cool. Yeah. That's like, it is becoming really popular. People are getting these vans and decking them out. And that's the beautiful thing about web design. You can absolutely do that. And I love that idea of having still somewhat of a schedule and a plan, because as I'm sure, anybody who travels realizes that time just disappears when you're traveling and doing stuff. So I could see that being very dangerous if you don't have a plan, because you could absolutely go on a 5-month vacation and get no work done. But if you have a plan and balance those, that's really cool to hear how that worked for you.
But it's interesting because as well, people have been saying to me, we're in lockdown, and I know a lot of people that have kind of gone, do you know what, I'm just going to take this as downtime. And I'm like, I'm just going to work as much as I can, even on my business just now, so that when I'm available to travel, I actually want to have a little bit of downtime to be able to do stuff that I enjoy. So I might, over the summer, if we've escaped, work a part-time for a couple of months and do it that way. So and this is the other great thing about web design, is because you're generally working with a couple of clients at a time. I generally say, right, this is the start date that I'm going to start working with you. So if I say I want to actually not take a client on in May, I can do that. You've got that flexibility to say, right, actually my diary, I mean, I'm currently saying to people, I can't take anyone on till May at the moment, because I've got clients booked in, but also I've structured time in because I want to do your SEO course. I've not got to that yet. It's been sitting in it, and after Michelle's amazing Q&A the other day, that was just mind blowing.
Oh my gosh.
That's my next focus. So, it's like,
yeah, that's a great, well, first of all, great mindset to have, being able to schedule all that out. And yeah, you're referencing Michelle, my SEO gal, who's in the Web Design Club and did a monthly presentation on keyword research. I'm actually going to have her on the podcast coming up here really soon to talk about the basics of keyword research, because obviously the presentation was very in-depth and visual, but we can at least scratch the surface here on the podcast. So going to have her on, because that was, oh my gosh, how amazing. But yeah, that's really great to hear how you're able to balance all that and your game plan for being able to kind of schedule out work. Now, one practical question on that is, because I typically advise against saying I can't take a new project on for a couple months, just because most clients are not going to wait that long. Have you found that to be true or not to be true? Have you found clients being respectful of saying, okay, I can start in a couple months? What does that look like for you?
So for me, I do it in a slightly sneaky way, because I know that I need that time, but we both know how bad clients are at getting content together. So I kind of play on the, okay, I am looking to, I generally have an 8-week book time, but that's for when I start your build. But I don't start your build until I have all your content.
Beautiful.
Now you're going to need that time to get together. Have you got photography done? Do you need a branding set? Do you need copywriter? All these things are not going to happen tomorrow. So I actually use that time to give me buffer time, but actually the client is doing stuff in that time. So they're still feeling like they're part of the process, but I don't have to actually do any work until they've got all that together. So I just find for me that works really well, because you're not pushing them away, but you've got that lead time there.
Yeah. And I think it was a thread in the club where somebody was asking about whether they should stop being available during certain times or book out a couple months. And my advice was similar to what you do there. I hate to say a sneaky way, but I think that is a good way to phrase it, because you can absolutely space and stagger projects just by saying, because I want people to get that first payment in, but you can definitely adjust the deadline on projects and give clients room, particularly depending on the brand and the company, to get their house in order before you get going on the project. Because what you said is absolutely true, and this is what almost everyone finds out. The content collection process is generally one of the hardest in web design, and sometimes clients need to be guided through that, and they also need the time for that. Because a lot of clients, I had clients in the past that would start on a project, and then 2 weeks later they'd be like, hey, how are things coming along? And I'm like, well, it looks like a blank screen right now because you haven't given me anything. So generally, and I didn't say that to them, but that was just what was going through my head. You do have to give clients that time, which can absolutely allow you to have some time to work that in with your current schedule, or if you want to travel. Like I imagine if you book a couple new projects and they're going to need some time, then what a great time to go out and ski for a couple weeks, or take a whole week off if you want, and just check in one day a week with clients. Like you could absolutely have a very balanced life of freedom and get a lot of time away while still keeping tabs on things and still have the business move forward. Would you agree?
Oh, 100%. And that's where I'm a massive fan of automations in the business as well. I'm like, there's so many tools that you can link up to your website or your business in general, so that they're answering emails or doing stuff for you, or taking a lot of the heavy lifting out of your admin side of things, that just make your life, so much easier. And the more you can add automations and, be able to take the day-to-day repetition out of your business, frees you up to do other stuff, And I think that's a really important lesson I learned in my other business, that, the more that you can free yourself from, the daily stuff, the better you can support your clients. And actually, that's a really key part of it as well. So, I think it's if I had to sort of sum up the things that I feel are kind of important that when it's coming to the whole sort of client care stuff, it's back to, giving them value, but making them feel like you're there for them, but not always, but it was really interesting. One of my clients today, I was chatting to today, and we're just putting her on our maintenance plan because we've just finished the build. And she said, I just wanted to say you all the way through this have made me feel like I'm your only client and that I could ask you anything. And I thought that is amazing, because that's what I want my clients to feel like, that I'm just focusing on them and no one else. And I was like, that's great, because that means I've done it properly. Now, throughout this build, I've had other things on. I've had, I've been doing this, that, and the next thing. I had a few days out last week because we got the most amazing snow in Scotland, and I went ski touring around the farm and, just had a little bit of a play. But all that time, she felt I was the only person, I was her only client, so it was just like really focusing your attention in a managed way is, and you can do that no matter where you're sitting. If I'm sitting in my office here or I'm sitting in my van somewhere, as long as you're responding in a professional way and keeping your business ticking over is probably the right word when you need to in certain points, then absolutely it can all be done remotely.
Yeah. You can also schedule out the quick updates and notifications on projects, whether you do that manually or you can automate those. A lot of times you can schedule it on your email to go out at the end of the day on Friday, just to let clients know, hey, I'm working on this. Can I step into my coaching shoes for you real quick, Suzanne? Because I want to put my coaching shoes on and tell you to do something here if you're willing. What you just said that client said should absolutely be on your homepage. I would highly recommend taking that snippet, get the headshot, and make that a little review snippet on your homepage, because that is gold. Like, that's such a great response. That's also a little hidden trick for everybody on how to get testimonials is when you get a real answer like that, there's your little snippet. There's your testimonial. So I would love to see that on your homepage, because that's
my whole site's getting a revamp soon, and I'm going to have some case studies up there finally.
There you go.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, a lot of good lessons so far, Suzanne. I mean, that's really great to hear how you've taken what you did previously in another life of just being a photographer and then use that to continue to do that, but then bring in web design. You realize web design would give you more of the lifestyle you love. But COVID, even though it hit, you were still able to pivot really well, and you focused on customer care and utilize your network, which is really cool. Now, did you do any other, I know you didn't really market or anything like that because it's all referral based, but did you do anything else to get clients while you were working remotely? Or did you just rely on referrals in your previous network? Like, did you join any type of online groups or anything like that helped, or was it strictly organic?
One of the things which I'm sure if you get Melissa back in, she's got a great community called the Marketing Fix. And there's a few other sort of Facebook communities that I was members of. And I just kind of, it was a tip Melissa gave me, a couple of years ago, is just showed up in there and was helpful. And the more you help people, the more people would sort of message you and go, actually, thanks for that. Or taking 5 minutes just to help them on why was my Divi menu not working, or why is this not working, or, which, you don't have to spend hours doing it. But if you're seen as that helpful person in a community, when they need a new website or they decide that they're going to leap into something like, rebuilding some landing pages or whatever, you're the person that's going to be in their head because you helped them in the group. So as much as, I said, I don't spend a lot of time, befriending clients in Facebook. I am in a lot of Facebook groups, And I just, if I see someone asking a question and I know the answer, I'll just answer it, So I think being that friendly, helpful person has definitely paid off.
Have you chatted too much with Christian?
No, I really want to hook up with Christian more because he's just, he seems to be everywhere.
Well, the reason I mentioned that is I interviewed him a couple of weeks ago. His episode will come out after this one here pretty soon. But he essentially built an entire white label business working in Brazil, but working with no one no companies in Brazil. He works with entirely folks in the US and UK. And the way he built that was just what you said. He started in Facebook groups and was helpful. And then by just helping out one step at a time, he built a name for himself. And that's how he built his white label business up. That's how he came across my feed. And then he came through one of my business course. And then that's how I got to know him and know his business. And now he's one of our lead designers for In Transit. And he has a whole white label business that he runs again from, he lives in Brazil and doesn't work with anybody in his area. So that's like one of the most valuable lessons for anybody who wants to get clients abroad, because let's face it, if you're going to work remotely, you have to get creative with those type of strategies. And I think the few points you've laid out so far on that are key. Use your personal network, no matter where that is. Customer care, keep in touch with them and take really good care of your clients, make an amazing experience, and get involved with some of these groups, both free and premium, that can really be great referral sources. And maybe they're not clients directly, but they can be part of your network. Has that helped you out as well with really surrounding yourself with a network of people online that can, maybe not, they may not be your clients, but they might have clients that could use you, right?
And I think definitely, and I think as well as, which we touched on earlier, is the photography niche for me, works really well because I was already known as a photographer. And what a lot of people love the photography Facebook groups, people are recommending me because they're like, oh yeah, Suzanne, she knows what a photographer needs from a website. So they they already feel like they don't have to explain, we want big images, which every web designer goes, oh my God.
Yeah.
But I know how to optimize images and I know how to make a photography site fast because, you're always going to get with a photographer, they want loads of images on there. And then of course you start looking at the page load speed and going things, so it's, that's where I feel like I'm already a step ahead because there's that trust element. They feel that I'll get what they want. They understand. So that's been a really good thing because I can kind of play on my past experience, but networking in these groups, they kind of go, oh yeah, Suzanne, or, you need to get in touch with Suzanne, or, I'm already talking about photography stuff. And then someone will say something about web design and I'm like, okay, I can help you on that as well. And they're like, oh, perfect. So.
Yeah. How did you, I should have asked this question earlier, when you brought in web design with your photography clients, how did you go about that? Did you do like a big email blast, letting everybody know that, hey, I'm now doing websites as well? Or did you just do it very organically, just one by one as you were working with families?
It was just very organically because I kind of initially, when I started doing it, just almost saw it as a helping out someone I knew, I'm going to charge them a little bit, but not really. And in all honesty, it was February last year was when I started really launching the business. And 3 weeks later, boom, so it's like, I literally launched the business in COVID. So it's been all done in normally I would be network in person or maybe trying going around businesses locally. I haven't been able to do that at all. The whole thing has had to be done on a web-based networking, Facebook, that sort of, which actually shows how much you can do without in-person networking.
Sure. No, great point. And so this episode is going to come out mid-March. So it'll be probably just after a year that you really went for it. So congrats on that, Suzanne. That's awesome. Did you do anything else though? Because you pivoted, you had to pivot. You said before you lost 80% of your income with photography. Did you just get more involved with the groups? Did you have more time to start doing more organic stuff like that to really help build your business? Or did it just so happen that everyone who knew you did web design came to you when COVID hit?
So what I found was very quickly, a lot of photographers in the businesses were going, oh, they were in the same position as me. They'd lost. So how are we going to, we need to get an online store going. So we're going to maybe do some courses. So actually I do a lot of work with LMS Lifter and WooCommerce and stuff. So I build quite a lot of membership courses and sites. So I found that just naturally that was what was happening. And it started, I did a photographer site in January. she was a member of a photography group that does baby photography, and she mentioned, someone had came up in a post and said, "Oh, I'm looking for a new website. Who did yours, Fiona?" "Oh, it was Suzanne." "Right, okay." Got in touch. So that led to another two bookings. Then there was another person I know that does Facebook courses, and she recommended to a client of hers who is a personal trainer, "Can I do a membership site? Because obviously gyms had shut down. Could I do?" So we've built this big membership site based on, she's got about 400 Vimeo videos, and it's all locked down with WP Fusion and Lifter. It was a beast to make, but it was amazing. She's referred me to another two trainers. So it's been this sort of very organic client referral thing. And I think it just comes back to this, it just comes back to the way I treat people, because I think they naturally want to help. It's been really interesting. Yeah. And another key part of it is making sure that I'm building up my maintenance plan at the same time. So I'm keeping the connection with those clients. So it means that I think as well, when they are talking to other people, I'm still front and center in their mind, because we chat every month on the maintenance calls. So yeah, that's been super valuable.
Yeah. What a great, just practical case study of just going one client at a time, organic referral type of growth. That's the best. I mean,
I have had zero budget for marketing this year. Zero. I have not spent a penny on an advert. I have not spent a penny on anything. I will, but that to me proves that you can build a business from sheer networking and being there, turning up, and
customer first, right? That customer experience. Because it sounds like with you, it's a very organic process the entire way through. I know you're a great communicator. So is that something you really honed in on when you started going into web design? Was like the onboarding, the during the process with collecting content, and then offboarding as well?
I think I'm very personal with clients in that I want them to know who I am as a person. So everyone knows, like I jokingly say, I've been out walking the dog, I've been doing this. I did say to my mum the other day, I'm maybe getting too personal on calls, because every single client that I've finished a website for has sent me a gift of a bottle of gin, because I always, when I finish their site, I go, right, I'm going to have a big glass of gin, to celebrate. And everyone sent me a bottle of gin.
That's awesome.
So I obviously talk about gin far too much, but, I do think all the way through, I want them to feel special. When I'm talking to, and back to that client today saying I felt like I was your only, client, I want to empower my clients as well. So I always tell them all the way through that, my goal is for you to never need me again. But equally, I want them, so I'm very much explaining the process when we go through things, when we have handovers. I record our Zooms. I have a library of looms that I do for people. And I think that's key, because I think there's a horrible, and I think it's quite a historic thing now that web designers were seen as people that would kind of, befuddle people with the technical and all this sort of stuff and so on. And, I've found that it's been a lot of, business startups or smaller, photography businesses and things like that. And they're a bit scared about the whole website thing. They've maybe never had one before.
Yeah.
Or they've had a really bad experience with a web designer that has taken them for a lot of money and not provided them with the thing that they wanted, which, is a really sad thing.
Or so a lot of times clients feel trapped if they're like, I can't do a thing and I need to rely on my designer for everything.
Yeah. Hopefully and they're locked in.
She shows up. Yeah. Yeah.
And, I've had a few this year where, and this is back to this whole customer care thing. And it just blows my mind that people are doing this, that, they don't even own their own domain. They don't, they're locked into hosting that they can't, the designers lock that in as part of their whole build. And they, when they try and leave, they can't get out, or they won't release, I had one guy that wasn't going to release the client's domain name. And I was like,
oh, wow.
It's just not good. So, I think there's an element of people come into the whole process slightly scared. And when they meet me and I try and reassure them that, I start by saying, you have to go and buy your domain name. I'm going to tell you how to do it. There's a loom. Here you go and watch this. But you have to have the power. You have to have the control, because it's your business. It's your site. And you have to, if you want me to do all the maintenance and stuff, that's absolutely fine. But I want you to understand what we're doing and why. So if I'm suggesting a plugin, I'm going to explain exactly why we're doing it. Now, they may not care, but I think it's really important that people are part of the process.
Well, you're also hitting on a very, very valuable point, which is empowering and educating clients in the beginning. The cool thing about this is it actually works to our strengths as web designers to have more control, because while I agree, you definitely want the client to feel like they're not locked into something that can never change, you also don't want them going to buy a cheap GoDaddy hosting plan and you're like, oh crap, by the way, didn't mean for you to buy it. You do want to lay out the options. But the really cool thing about this is if you empower them and you let them know what's involved, I've found a lot of clients are like, you know what, Josh, we like you, we trust you, we want you to handle it. And that's the best, because then you don't have to sell. Then you don't have to feel like you're locking somebody in. They don't need to feel like they're trapped. They just like, you know what, I trust you, Suzanne, I like you. And then, a lot of them, and even if they want to run their website and do updates occasionally, will often start doing it. And then 2 months later, they'll be like, you know what, well, let's just add an extra hour a month as a retainer for quick updates. There's a lot of power in that too. But again, it goes into that customer care and empowerment and having that different approach from, instead of being salesy, teaching and educating. And there's so much power in that. I love that you have that mindset.
But it's interesting. I've got one client that at the moment I'm doing a build for, and she's asked if I'll do the hosting and maintenance. And I'm like, yeah, it's not a problem. That's an obvious add-on. And the whole reason she's come to me is because her existing web designer won't let her edit her site. And I'm like, okay, that's an interesting concept. And she said, yeah, but he basically said to me that, oh, well, you won't do it anyway. So, I'll just keep you on my and she was like, it was the attitude that made her go, she said, I probably won't end up doing any edits and I'll get you to do it. But telling me I'm not allowed on my own website just felt wrong. And I thought, gosh, and it's back to this whole how you treat your clients thing. I thought, he's lost a client by talking down to them or talking in a way that they felt really uncomfortable with. So, yeah.
That's a great lesson. Yeah. And a lot of times, like I know in that situation, this is a great topic because this is a very common question I see across everyone who's doing web design. It's like, how much control do I want to give my client? Inevitably, you'll get the clients who will go in and just destroy your design. I've had that happen a number of times. But at the same time, you don't want to be that designer like you just talked about that makes the client feel like they're stupid and they have zero control. So I know just as a practical example, what helped me is I would tell clients, like, I can absolutely, give you access to do this. Here's some training. I would recommend, or, I do want to just give you some warnings about some stuff that might happen. And just remember, we're always able to help you with this because this is what we do. And sometimes I'd even gone to the point where I would like save a section or save an old design. And if a client went in there and added 3 paragraphs where we initially had this beautiful design, you could show them the before and after. Say, okay, I saw you went in here and edited this and, this is what it looks like, but this is what ours would look like. This is, I would recommend going about it this way, and here's why. And then all of a sudden, you can be the person they trust for those little updates and stuff. And it's a much better way to go about it than that douchey designer who was talking down to your client.
And I think it's all about giving people choices as well, because I've kind of said to them, what do you feel that you want to change? If they're on a maintenance plan with me, I'm going to be doing plugins, and all that sort of stuff. Is it just you want to go in and tweak some wording and stuff? Do I just give you editor access? Is that, would that make you more comfortable? And it's, you can, if you give them the options to not having, full access of all the admin and they just delete, whatever. But as long as you're giving your client choices and not making the decisions for them, you can phrase it in a way that they actually go, yeah, I don't want to see all that back end stuff. I just want to be able to access. But it's treating them like a human being and not just a source of your invoice at the end of the month.
Yeah, that's great. Well said. Well, wow, Suzanne, this has been awesome. Oh my gosh, we've hit some really cool topics in here between, using your past experience with photography, pivoting when you had to, but really rocking out doing it, customer care, organic leads, traveling, working remotely, scheduling your projects. I love how we kind of wrapped up with talking about how you're actually literally working with clients and the mindset shift behind that. Because again, the most common question most people ask, and I could do a podcast episode on how to get clients, it would be the most popular episode. What wouldn't be as popular as an episode would be customer care, but that should be the most popular because that's what truly matters the most. And I love seeing what you've done. This is the first time we've got to chat in person. You've been a student, you're in my membership, I've overseen you and I've watched your stuff, but I guess I didn't really realize how far into this you were with the customer experience side of things. So this is awesome, Suzanne. I really appreciate you being transparent about everything you've learned and done. I have one more question for you, but in the meantime, where do you want people to go to check you out and check your website out?
So, it's www.blackcreativemedia.co.uk is my website. I'm hopefully going to get a chance to get some work in there in the next couple of months. But it sounds a bit. I will say I'm just too busy with clients. Yeah. But yeah, that's where I go. I do have Facebook and Insta, but they have not been updated for ages. So I need to get my that's all right. I mean, what's working for you right now is working for you, and you don't need to bother with, coming up with social media campaigns and stuff. So by golly, I say, if you're having more free time to ski and travel and do the stuff you want to do, by all means, keep on doing it. That's awesome. And yeah, you know what? When any of my students say my website isn't real great because I've been swamped, that's one of my favorite things to hear. So no worries on that. Your website's still super nice. I know you've got some tweaks you want to make. I hope I see that little testimonial snippet on there because I think that will be great, but it still looks great. So you're good. I would like to ask you as we wrap up here, for somebody who wants to do web design and travel, what is maybe just one piece of advice? What's one of the most important things you would recommend somebody think about, before traveling and working remotely while doing web design? I would say think about how are you going to find your leads from your way? And it comes back to that networking thing. And I think for me, the niche thing is so important. Being an expert in the area that you want to work in means that you can be seen in social media groups and things like that. That is absolutely the way I would go. Go into social media groups, be seen as an expert, and then people are going to be much more likely to contact you when they need the help. Yeah.
Great point. There it is. That was very concise and well said. I couldn't agree more. Mm-hmm. Suzanne, thanks so much for coming on. This was a blast. I'm so excited to see. I mean, you had one heck of a year in 2020. I can't wait to see how 2021 ends up for you.
Yeah. Fingers crossed to get some traveling as well.
Yes. I want to see those ski pictures and those van pictures for sure.
Awesome.
All right. Cheers, Suzanne. Thanks for coming on.
Okay.
Hey guys and gals, just wanted to pop in with a couple things before you head out. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to this podcast. I would love to hear your feedback, and it will also help other web designers find the show. Be sure to check out the show notes for this episode. Just go to joshhall.co, click on podcasts, and search this episode number, and you'll find all the links, descriptions, and resources we talked about. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe, and you'll be notified when the next episode is live. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll catch you guys on the next episode.